Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Big Money Stylist podcast. I'm Danielle, and this is my lead. I was gonna say, I don't know what I was gonna say. This is my leader. This is my work wife. This is.
Hey, I'm Ani.
Hey, this is Ani Rivera. She is the lead trainer of Naturally Made Rose, which is an extension system that I created over a decade ago. And we started this podcast like 2 years ago, 1 year ago.
2018.
I thought you were going to say 20 years ago.
3 years ago.
No.
18. We started in 2018. 18, 19, 20.
Wow.
Shit.
Well, we started this to kind of add value to hairstylists, but I've been getting messages, and you have too.
Same.
People are like, oh my God, I needed this podcast today. Thank you so much. I'm not a hairstylist, but I love it. And I'm like, cool. So I feel like it can really pertain to a lot of business owners and hairstylists.
And I feel like we generally tend to talk. I was going to take my jacket off and then I made a weird movement. I feel like we generally tend to like talk about hairstylists, but also understanding that this can go for any industry, any business, and business owners in general.
Right. So today, we always come, we literally don't plan our podcast. We get here, they're very when we teach classes, it is very...
I'm very strict.
It is very structured. It is very strict. You know what's so funny? I did a training with Garrett in the middle of when we were doing our last classes. We've had like back-to-back classes here in Dana Point, California. And I came in the middle and did a training, and he's like, you were like on fire. And I was like, oh, I'm in trainer mode. Like, this is like,
I have class. I'm doing shit.
Yeah, I'm like, he's like, oh, I've only seen like podcasts, Danielle. I'm like, no, I'm in trainer mode. He's like, man, it's fierce. I'm like, well, so we try to come to you guys every week and add value. And today we wanted to talk about integrity. Honestly, like, I feel like that's one of those words that everybody thinks they're integrity with themselves, but everyone has a different idea of what that looks like, right?
Yes, and I feel like integrity is almost one of those overused words, like integrity or loyalty or whatever it is that people are like, yeah, I have so much integrity, like my morals, like I'm so loyal. And to be honest, for me, even like the word loyalty, the more that someome's like, but I'm so loyal to you, I'm so loyal, I'm like, loyal people don't have to say that they're loyal.
Yeah.
People with integrity don't walk around and say, hi, I'm Ani, I have a lot of integrity. Hey, hi, I'm Ani, nice to meet you.
Saying,
how much integrity do you have?
I own a luxury salon. If you have to put you're a luxury salon, chances are you're not a luxury salon.
Hi, Ani, nice to meet you. I have a nice car. What kind of car do you drive? Like, things like that are so weird for me to hear. And I think it's so interesting because, as you know, like anyone who owns a business, man, you have to make some hard decisions.
Oh.
Like, you want everyone to win. You want everyone who joins your team to be like the best version that they could possibly be, but the unfortunate circumstances, that doesn't always happen.
Well, and it's so funny because I think that sometimes people, like I always ask people, I'm like, what do you want? Like when they're inside my team, if I feel like a shift or like maybe like energetically them pulling away, or I just feel like they don't want to be there anymore. There's something going on in their family. Like, I don't know what it is, right? My question is always, what do you want? Stop telling me you're loyal. Like, I don't care. Just because you show up to work every day doesn't mean you're loyal. I'm like, no. I need to know, what is a win for you? What do you want? And it's hard to really have a very honest conversation with yourself and say, well, what do I want? You know what I mean?
Well, and I think it's because most people, first off, are never actually asked that question.
I am very direct.
Yeah, they're never asked that question. And then when they are, it's kind of like, ooh, I've never thought about it. Mm-hmm. Or it's one of those moments when people are like, I don't know. It's like, wait, you probably do know, but you're not saying it for a reason.
Right.
So now what's the reason that you are not saying this? Because I feel like even, and I can speak for myself, in moments where I've been frustrated or been upset or like whatever it is, if someone's like, what do you want? Like, now, long term, I always have an answer.
Like for me, like I remember when I've heard that, and it's like, I'm like, oh, like it kind of corners you. You're like, I don't know what I want. I don't know what you kind of like. You don't like literally sit and think about it. You're like, I don't know. But I think we do know what we want.
I think deep down everybody knows. I think it just depends on when you are willing to admit it and who you're willing to admit it to.
Right. Because I think, like I said, I feel like I can always feel when like somebody on my team or something's kind of pulling away and I'm like, well, what is it? And I always feel like, I'm like, I don't want you to be here if you don't fully want to be here 100%, right?
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think that everybody thinks that breakups or firing someone or changing pace or whatever it is has to be something super negative, like, I hate her and she hates me and that's why she's gone. It isn't always like that. And I actually think most of the time it shouldn't have to be like that. It shouldn't be something
so crazy
big and dramatic.
As a business owner myself, like one of my biggest mistakes, not my biggest mistakes, but one of my mistakes is like I want people to like drink the Kool-Aid with me. I'm like,
Yeah.
don't you see, like, this is so awesome. It's such an amazing opportunity. Like, I want you to be here. Like, and so oftentimes when I would see signs in the past of people that like little things, like little jabs or digs or whatever it was, and I was like, ooh, that doesn't sit well. But I kind of like brushed it off and ignored it, right? And then it would kind of like all of a sudden it would snowball into this massive problem. And I think I saw the signs of that particular person or whoever it was maybe not wanting to be there. But I wanted it for them, and I wanted to ignore that problem. And I'd be like, whatever. And then, like I said, it would kind of like snowball, and then I'd be like, it's gotten to the point where it's so bad, like I have to let you go, and it's like kind of an ugly firing, right?
Well, and then even as like business owners, for example, and it doesn't matter what industry you're in, sometimes you look at an employee and you're like you do all the right things, like you do all the right things, you're checking the boxes, but you know that something's wrong. And I feel like that's even happened when people have come like to DKW to like assist and potentially get hired on. I know I've had those instances where
because
I need
someone... when they check the box, then they don't have, they can say like, I did my part. I did everything I was supposed to. I checked all the boxes.
But I think there's so much more as showing up like as a team member and like as a teammate than just like saying, well, I did it. Like, what more do you want from me? But that is something I've experienced where someone has come in to like potentially be hired on into the salon, and meeting them, I was like, you do all the right things and you say all the right things, but something doesn't feel well.
Right.
When it doesn't sit well, and I've asked other team members, I'm like, and I actually I do this on purpose. I never give my opinion first, because I already know how I feel, and I know that me as a person, I'm okay with not going with the flow of how everybody else feels. If everyone else is like, I love this person, and I'm like, this person doesn't vibe with me, I don't have an issue saying that, but I know that's not the norm.
Yeah.
Well, and I feel like a lot of people, if you're the one person who's like, I'm not in, and everyone else is like, I'm in, then you almost become like the one too shy to be like, no.
Yeah. I used to think as a business owner, I used to be like, oh, it's my say in the end, and whatever I say goes. Like, I'm the business owner. And I realized that people show up differently in front of me than they do my team. And if I have to look at somebody I'm hiring on, who are they going to work more with? Are they going to work more directly with me, or are they going to work more directly with my team? They're going to work more directly with my team.
Yeah.
So people are funny. So they show up one way with me, and then they can be like a total dick to my team. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to hire you. Like,
well, and
it's not going to work that way.
And I've been on like, I've seen that happen inside of the salon. People come on and we're like, hey, Danielle, like, this is a problem. You're like, really?
Yeah, and I'm like, they do not operate like that in front of me. And you're like, they're a different human being when you're in the salon, which is dumb. And I'm like, do they think that like my team members like won't share that with me? That like
I think they think is that if they're on your good side, anything else can go. And now I feel with my position, because I'm essentially like the second almost, that then it's like, oh, well, if I'm on Danielle's good side and I'm on Ani's good side, like my position is secure.
Yeah.
But it's so
well, and
hard.
I've had to learn how to just like trust my teams, like meaning like, okay, so the people that are like red hot core in my team, like they're doing a lot of work that like I have to value their input. Like and I told you guys that like I recently had to let go of an artist, and I kind of was like, my experience with her is not the same as your experience with her. And I'm like, and I'm not going to lie, like this is going to be kind of a hard fire for me. I'm like, because what I have seen, there hasn't been any red flags or problems, right? And like I said, in the past, when like Crystal or you, my salon manager, would come to me and be like, hey, this person's doing this and this, I'd be like, no, they're not. It's fine. And I literally would like push it so... Like, I would push it so far that's why when an artist would leave, I'm like, holy shit, they just took like 20 of our clients. Because all these red flags that you guys were seeing, I was like, no, it's fine. But in the end, because I didn't listen to you guys, it ended up costing me a lot of our clients, right? Whether they, and so I just kind of like learned to be like, okay, I need to respect what the information that I'm receiving from my team members, as well as like kind of going off my gut feeling of like, oh, I could see that. I could, like I said, the person I let go the other day, like it was a hard fire for me because I wasn't in the salon as much working with this specific stylist. And I was like, well, and I sat her down and I was like, hey, I've loved our time together. And I literally said, I'm like, what I hate in firing people is I'm like, I don't want you to look at this as a waste of time. Yeah. Like people get so butthurt about things and like, that was a waste of time. I'm like, you mean to tell me, and she didn't say this. No. I'm like, but I've had that in the past. I'm like, you mean to tell me that your year that I poured into you and taught you was a waste of time? I'm like, why can't you use that to your advantage and realize that you have this new skill that you didn't have a year ago? This wasn't a waste of time. This was relevance gained. I'm like, so you need to flip your perspective on this. And so it drives me crazy when people leave and then they're so irritated. I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, I feel like just look at it as like that was a learning opportunity for you.
Well, and not only that, being inside of a leadership position in any company, whether you're the one who owns it or you're a manager or director, it doesn't matter. The things that, and I'll use, myself and Crystal and Katie, so it's the director of education, the salon manager, and director of operations. Anything we say, we are, I feel like, always very careful with our words, especially when we come to you, because this isn't a joke to us.
Right.
This isn't some catty bullshit of like, I don't like her, so I'm going to get her fucking fired. This is someone's life.
Right.
This is their livelihood. This is their career. This is their family. Like, this is not a joke to us.
Right.
And even if and something like we've told the team is like, you're not gonna like each other all the time. Like, honestly, we're humans. We're gonna have feelings. You're gonna have moments where you're like, I'm pissed at you. I'm upset with you. Like, I might not like you today. And that's okay. But respect, that never goes away. You can be upset with someone and say, Danielle, I'm upset with you based on XYZ. Can we talk about it? And that's still a very direct conversation and a respectful conversation.
Right.
So Danielle also knows now, by the time we come to her and we're like, okay,
I know it's a problem. Like, if you guys sit me down and you're like, here's what we're seeing, I'm like, oh shit, okay, this is a problem.
Yes, because this isn't something
it's
that
not
we
like
ever take
he
lightly.
said, she said kind of thing. It's like,
hey, she said this and my feelings are hurt. It's like, hey.
It's like, hey, we've seen the pattern. This has been going on for the last 6 months. And we feel like it's something you need to know. Like, because I don't want to hear about the catty bullshit. Like,
no,
honestly,
I don't have time for catty bullshit.
I don't have time. And I was talking to Carlos, one of our trainers. I'm like, do you feel like you're like sometimes a babysitter? He's like, all the time. But because I asked him, I'm like, who helps manage your team? He's like, I do. And I was like, oh, I remember that. It is exhausting.
It's rough.
So I'm kind of at a place where even in my business and my career, I'm like, I want to focus on my students, on my academy. And not to say I'm not focusing on my salon and the experience that it's giving, but I'm like, don't bring me the catty bullshit. I'm like, only bring it to me when it's like we're at that point where
hey,
it's like,
this is now a problem.
Is like this, we need to talk about this.
And also, I think one of the things is, we didn't come to you when it was like at the wit's end, the building's on fire. Now we got a motherfucking problem. It was like,
then it's bad.
It's already too late.
Yeah.
It's already too late.
Yeah.
And when you have your employees, your directors, your like managers, things like that come to you, especially when it's a team like we've created that's so close, we were like, hey, we are already starting to experience XYZ. This is very reminiscent of when these previous employees were in here. Like, just so you know, you're up to date. We are now looking out for these behaviors. And something that I think is really interesting is, we updated the rest of the staff at the salon and let them know, like, this person was no longer with us, which for us, it's like, hey, we love you. We wish you the best. Like, it's just not your place anymore. Like, it's cool. And one of the girls actually messaged me privately and was like, I feel awkward asking this. I feel awkward saying this. Like,
but why did she?
She literally was like, what happened? I just want to know so I don't do it.
Right.
And I was like, that's not an awkward question. Well, here was my response. I said, here's the deal. Here's a great way to look at something. And this is, all of you need to like really think about this, whether you work for someone or your own boss and you have employees. My response to her was, here's how you know whether you are or are not doing something that will get you fired. If you are doing something behind the scenes or whatever it is when you go home on Instagram, doesn't matter. If you're doing something and your thought is, I hope they don't find out.
Yeah,
or
then you're out of integrity.
Exactly. Or I need to keep this a secret. Or, ooh, let me do it quietly. Let me hide. If you are hiding, if you are being secretive, if you're doing any of those things because you know it's going to get you in trouble, then you are already taking the risk because you're deciding, I don't care.
It's like entertaining. It's like entertaining the thought. It's like, hey, I might cheat on my it's literally entertaining the thought. You're like, hey, if you're already entertaining the thought, if you put yourself in that situation, like, it's gonna happen.
Absolutely it is. And that's one of the things that I think everybody thinks, like, you know what, this thing will be a secret. Nothing is ever, like literally, the only way for no one to find something out is for you to never say anything, and no one can ever shut their fucking mouth.
And even if you're kind of entertaining the idea of working somewhere else or looking somewhere else, that means you're not happy. Like,
and that's okay.
And that's okay, but like, admit that to yourself. Like, hey, like, if you're literally entertaining other possibilities, like, that means like you're not all in. Like,
and there's nothing wrong with not being all in.
Exactly.
Every opportunity is not a lifelong opportunity. Like, and really, and that's the thing I think people have to realize. I think they think like, well, if I'm working here, it has to be forever. And I think the hard part is sometimes like we don't know why we're unhappy. We can't peg one specific thing and be like, this thing happened, I don't like it, I'm unhappy, I want to leave. Sometimes it's just a feeling, just like when you let her go, you were like, I'd heard enough, there was enough information, even though you were like, I have never experienced any of those things. Right. I have to trust my team, and like this is now the place where we found ourselves.
But I also, there were things where I felt like an energetic shift from the team.
Yeah.
And I was like, huh. And I told her, I said, I'm like, I literally was like, I wonder how you're doing. Like, I would kind of, that thought would come in my head. I'm like, I could feel there was some kind of separation, whether you had something going on with your family or whatever it was. And I'm like, and in the end, I believe that's probably what it was. And I'm like, I think that I have to be the bad guy, and don't think of this as like, think of this as like a blessing in disguise, honestly. I'm like, because I'm like, I know you say you're all in, but like if there's part of you that's kind of questioning or whatever it is, like maybe there is a different or better opportunity for you, and that's okay. And I have to recognize those signs, and I have to let you fly, because people want to play it safe, right?
Yeah.
They want to kind of like maybe cheat, but like stay here because it's safe. They're like, I want to look over here, but I still want to stay married. I'm like, no, you can't do that.
You can't have a cake and eat it too.
You can't have your cake and eat it too. So you need to commit one way or the other. And I just kind of, I like the enough information that you guys had shared with me, plus the feelings that I was already having. I'm like, I can't let this snowball. I need to nip it in the butt right now. And it was, again, like it was probably one of my hardest fires because it hadn't gotten to that point. And I think people always wait to they get to this.
They need a reason.
They need a reason. And they get to this point like, I didn't even see it coming. And
you know
like,
what though?
You didn't see it coming? Come on. Like, come on.
Well, and it's even like breaking up with someone, like in an actual relationship. Because, and I know people listening to this, you may experience that where you're like, he didn't, or she didn't do anything wrong. They didn't cheat. They didn't hit me. They weren't weird. They didn't do anything bad, but I don't feel it anymore. Like maybe you fell out of love or it just doesn't work, and that's okay.
Right.
Like it's okay to be like, you know what, for whatever reason, this thing does not work for me anymore.
Right.
But I think the biggest thing is never let yourself fall out of integrity. And even like if you're the person that you have to fire people or you've been fired, like also, I always say, like, also take accountability because rarely does anything just come out of nowhere. Yeah. There's been instances like things have happened. And even for business owners, for example, like, I think business owners have honestly the hardest fucking job because you're expected to justify any and every decision to every Sue, and fucking Tom, Dick, and Larry.
I don't do that anymore. Even going into my conversation yesterday, I'm like, I can maybe give her some stupid petty reasons. I'm like, I'm not going to do that. I just said, I've appreciated your time here. I think that you came in at a perfect time. I think that you gained a lot of knowledge. I think that you had a lot of experience. I went on maternity leave. I'm like, I think like we were the perfect marriage for that period of time.
Yeah.
And now we need to, I didn't say marriage, but I was like, but we were like the perfect relationship for that period of time. And this relationship has come to an end, and that's okay.
Yeah. But then even like, for example, you know, because like the academy is so big and like everybody knows everybody in there, it's interesting for me, like when we've let anybody go before, everyone's like, but why? Tell me why? How could you? How dare you?
What did they do?
And it's like, wait a minute. First off, this is not your business. So to me, it's show a little respect for that. Second of all, you own your own business, and you know that sometimes you have to make a hard decision.
Right.
And it doesn't matter if everybody agrees with that decision or not, because the person making it has the most information, the most accurate information, and has already done the thinking and like almost like the cost and effect and like the consequences of what could come with something, consequences of someone staying and consequences of someone going.
Right.
So I also feel it's really inappropriate when you are not the business owner to be like, oh yeah, well you tell me why. It's like, I don't have to actually give you an excuse. So to any business owner where you're sitting there and you're like, man, I know this person isn't right. I know that they shouldn't be here, but I don't like have a thing. People are going to be upset. They're going to be mad. Honestly, like, here's the deal. You either do it now and you cut the cord and you start dealing with like...
Or what is it going to cost you later?
Exactly. Or if you let this spiral for another 6 months, for another year and a half, 2 years, whatever it is,
well, and like,
it's going to cost you more.
I was going to say, and I've had that happen to me. Like, I had, this was forever ago, and I've been very transparent about, like, I had a salon walkout.
Yeah.
And I was very close friends, and I felt our friendship drifting, and then I was like, I was like, almost like surprised when she was building a salon down the road. I was like, oh, but I was like, you know what? I saw the signs. I chose to ignore them. And then that's why I literally lost like half my clientele. I'm like, had I cut it like a year sooner or even 6 months sooner, it probably would have been a much cleaner, I keep thinking of marriage and divorce, but it would have just been a much cleaner split, right? But I kept saying like, no, she would never do that to me. She's my friend. Even though everybody behind me was like,
Bruh.
I don't know how to tell you this because I know you're like you guys are tight, but like here's what I'm seeing. I'm like, no, whatever, fuck you, we're tight. I don't believe that. And then all of a sudden I was like, how dare you? But I should have like been more involved. I should have paid attention to the signs. And so I, even as a business owner, like have to take accountability for my lack of actually showing up in that business relationship and then not be so shocked when it happened. I was like, fuck, that was a hard lesson.
Yeah, and and here's the thing, hindsight's 20/20, and I get that. Looking back now, it's very easy to be like, that was a red flag, that was a red flag, that was a red flag. But if you don't learn from that, and I feel like we experienced that one, then there was like a pretty bad firing like later on from maybe like a year later from that. But that one, like, okay, we started seeing it sooner, but we were like, maybe.
Yep.
And then we learned from that to where now this one is like, you know what? We still love you, we care about you, and I truly believe like, this artist no longer being here will benefit her in the future.
I do
more.
too. I believe that too. And
like, I truly believe that. But even now, we're learning, like, hey, we see it. We cut it sooner because we are not going to allow, like, something to snowball and get bigger and become a bigger problem. Like, let's call it what it is. You helped us. We helped you. We care about you. We wish you nothing but the best. But, like, it just doesn't work anymore.
So ask yourself, like, I know we're getting ready to wrap this podcast up. So ask yourself, you guys, if you are a business owner, where is there somebody maybe in your life that you need to cut the cord with that is actually going to cost you more stress in the future? Or where are the tough conversations that you need to have now to figure out where you're at? Because honestly, just like ignoring the problem or saying, oh, it's not going to happen, like you're out of integrity with yourself, honestly. Like you have to stay integrity with yourself. And even though it might seem like a tough conversation, it's going to be an even uglier, tougher conversation if you don't do it right now. So anyways.
Well, and one more thing, for any business owner that you're sitting there and you're like, I know I need to do it, but it's going to cause chaos for a little bit. Okay, then deal with it.
Yeah.
Because it might be chaotic for a week, for a month, for 2 months, but eventually the waves will calm down and it will be smoother sailing. Or you can let the storm get bigger, and what would have been a 2-week period of shenanigans and figuring stuff out is now months.
And not only that, like I've seen salon owners get in like legal battles. I'm ooh. I'm like, I mean, I've had situations where you got to learn from it, honestly.
Totally.
So I am just very protective of my team, very protective of my energy, and I try to always stay in integrity of like when I see something happening like that, I have to have like an honest conversation with myself, like how are you showing up? How could we prevent this? Or is this somebody that just needs to move on and we can respect the time we had together, but now it's time for them to go. And that's kind of how I felt with this particular artist. I was like, there was no hard feelings. It was uncomfortable and it was awkward, but I was just kind of like, you know what? In my heart, I'm like, that was a good move. I feel like that was a good move. Yeah. So anyways, you guys, I want to wrap up this podcast. We do have more classes coming out soon. So if you're an artist and you're like, and we also have open enrollment to our academy, which is a year program on the business marketing and sales for hairdressers, as well as the art and science of natural beautiful hair extensions. And we love color. So we teach a ton of color and blending and cutting and all that. So
and
like
styling, like all the things.
I think of like the academy as like your master's program for specifically hair extensions, but also we teach you the fundamentals of business marketing and sales, social media, assistant training, all that good stuff. So we have open enrollment this year, and we also have more classes coming up. If you just want to take a taste, if you want a taster before you sign up for the academy, we do have more small public classes coming up soon. Make sure you're on our email list. You can go to nbr.education.com.
Nope, nbr.education. No.
Oh, not go.
nbr.education.
nbr.education to find out more information. So we'll see you guys every week. Every Tuesday we release a new podcast, and
hey, have a good week,
like
guys.
Have a good week.
Bye.